Hello, Martin Desmarais for Urban Grower. Today we're going to be covering a bit of the story about our pepper and how they get to their life and to have a reward of this kind of harvest. So first thing, we're going to dim a bit of the light, quite strong. Okay, so those pepper were put to seedling on the 15th of February, last 15th of February. They were put on a mat, an old greenhouse inside, obviously, with some light as soon as they peek out of the ground. They were put in cocoa at the beginning, in the little small cell, and from there they would grow very fast up to the sixth leaf, uh, up to the sixth leaf, and then I decided to follow some advice that I had about cutting to the top to achieve a wider plant. I think while I'm looking back, I think it was a mistake because my plants were very tortured, as you can see. The trunk were weak, and I think there's a lot of energy that was lost during that setup. So first 6 weeks they were inside, and basically I decided to cut one of the top of it to have a wider plant and get more fruit as a result. I think that was a mistake because of the trunk, and also it stalled my plant for, I would say, 4 weeks. I don't know if it's because I moved them in the greenhouse, but the plant had stalled for a whole 4 weeks following the cutting of the top leaf. So I cut the top leaves at the time to get a wider plant and get more fruit as a result. That was a mistake because it stalled the plant. I don't know if it's because I put them at the same time in the greenhouse. Maybe, but I doubt. I think it's more the cutting of the leaf that makes them stall. And they look very yellow, like underfed. They were not looking okay. I don't know. I improve a bit my formula and put a bit more, 2, 3 more hour of lighting and vegetation mode. And then they start to pick up. All right. Finally, I moved them.
Planting in the Autopot system is easy. You start with the pot. You put the first fabric cloth in the bottom to prevent the hydroton to fall back into the pot. Then you put your 1.5 inch of hydroton or the air base replacing the hydroton. You're ready then to fill up your pot with the cocoa and insert your plant. Then you can move the pot on the base tray with the copper fabric root prevention system in the bottom.
They were looking nice when I put them outside, but I was used to feed them from the top for a week, let's say to establish the root system up to the bottom of the pot, but a week was not enough for pepper plant. I would have need to go for 4 weeks. So the plant stalled for another 4 weeks at that stage at the beginning of spring within the Autopot because the root system, even with the rhizotonic, the root system was not strong enough to reach the bottom of the pot in the Autopot system to feed itself by himself, let's say. So after a month of stalling, second time, I started to feed them by the top for another 3 weeks. So from there, they were able to build a strong root system, and it was able to feed itself in the bottom of the pot of the Autopot system and start to grow very fast. So I end up early end of the season with a lot of a first reward of a few pepper, but a lot of green pepper when I got to the close tipping point of freezing point mid-September, where pepper don't mature anymore very quickly. It takes a lot of time to mature outside at this time because there's no light, there's no heat at night, so there's a lot of missing part to get ripened fruit. So at this point, I decide to take them in the greenhouse, put the lights, the scintillate light in flowering mode for a schedule of 14, 15 hours a day. So from there, in about 3 weeks, I was able to get a lot of mature fruit and very ripe fruit ready to be processed as powder when I took them inside, I removed all the small green fruit and stressed a lot the plant. So I was making sure to get a ripening effect on the plant. So that's about the story for my pepper for this year. I will repeat the experience for the Autopot system for sure, with knowing that I have to top feed the plant for at least 4 weeks before stopping and letting the Autopot feed by gravity from the bottom. Because the root system is not established at that time, and it was clearly a beginner mistake with the Autopot. How did I fed those pepper to get that result and the number of fruit that I had at the end? I started the season after the germination with the Terra Vega, which was a single part fertilizer, so it was easier to manage during winter inside in small quantity. Didn't have to mix two-part fertilizer. And with the use of Rhizotonic at the concentration of 45 millimeters for 10 liters, with the Canazim at a concentration of 25 millimeters for 10 liters. The Canazim is to favorize the division, the cellular division, and the Rhizotonic is there to favorize the root and the placement and the growth of the root themselves during that period. So that's it. And then when I move outside into the planting, into the Autopot, I use still the Canazim. Actually, I used it all season long to favorize a rapid growth. And the Rhizotonic at this part I was still using at 45 millimeters for 10 liters to establish the plant well and rapidly into the Autopot system. In conjunction this time with the two-part Aqua Vega fertilizer that you mix equivalent part of each of those, A and B, in your result, in your formula, in your soup. At this time I was using concentration around 800 ppm, which reads out as a 1.5 of AC. A very good purchase. Nutrition is an essential tool to measure the density and the quantity of nutriment available to your plant in your water. So then flowering begin. I switch the fertilizer to a flowering fertilizer to maximize the number of fruit and flowers and fruit at the end. Flowering is established, and at the I still used a Rhizotonic and decanazine, but in smaller dose at 10 millimeters for 10 liters, and decanazine always at 25 to 10 liters of water. So the aquaflores was used at that time until the first fruit start to form. Then for 1 week, I used the PK1314 from Canna to maximize the number of flowers that are present on the plant and then maximize the number of the fruit. I would say the application of PK is for one in the season, but it would maximize your fruit by 10-15% in some case. A little word about pH. In the Autopot system, it's not very necessary to measure the pH, but the solution gives you a 6.2 standard pH at the beginning, and since the Autopot system is a like run to waste system, it's not recirculating. There's no pH difference or value of what's feeding the plant. Once you clean once every 2-3 weeks the base. So that's about how I also use for the second part some CalMag additive uh, to complement, and that's about it. So thank you for following. Happy growing. Martin Desmarais for Urban Grower.